In the late 2000s, Dr. Chuck Doswell, esteemed retired meteorologist, worked with a team of colleagues to answer several enduring questions about the deadliest tornado in American history. One question was quite simply, what did it look like? With there being zero known photographs of the tornado itself, Doswell and his team collected photographs of several particularly violent tornadoes over the past few decades and showed them to witnesses who saw the tri-state tornado. These witnesses consistently picked this photograph here as having the closest resemblance to what they saw in 1925. This was the monster that destroyed Wichita Falls. On a day now known as Terrible Tuesday, 25 tornadoes cut through the Red River Valley of Texas and Oklahoma during the afternoon of April 10, 1979, including 2 F4s in the densely populated towns of Vernon and Wichita Falls. This latter multi-vortex tornado, over a mile wide at times, carved a path of death and destruction through the south side of Wichita Falls, killing 45 and injuring 1,800. Over 3,000 homes were deemed a loss, making it the costliest tornado of the era, leaving thousands homeless in the wake of the storm. Unlike the casualties resulting from taking shelter within mobile homes often seen in the Deep South, only 5 of these deaths occurred indoors, while 25 occurred in vehicles, likely during a desperate attempt to flee the storm's path. Despite minimal average lead time in the 1970s, many residents knew storms were on the way due to a tornado hitting the town of Vernon over an hour earlier, which greatly reduced the overall death toll. Today, we'll review the meteorology behind this classic Southern Plains tornado outbreak, track the twisters as they tore through the Red River Valley, and follow the damage path in person through present-day Wichita Falls. It takes a lot of time and effort to get out there and film these places in person. This video would not be possible without the help of our sponsor, Private Internet Access. You see, whether you're working at home or out on the road like me, safety and security is paramount. Whenever you are browsing online on any device such as your phone or computer, your device is transmitting information out in the open that many other entities can see. Whenever you connect to the internet on a public Wi-Fi network at airports, coffee shops, friends' houses, or even at your own home, your data is at risk of being stolen. Private Internet Access is a virtual private network provider that hides your IP address and encrypts your internet connection, obscuring your activity from internet service providers, network administrators, and even government censors. Browsing the internet without a VPN is like never carrying an umbrella. It just takes one stray thunderstorm for you to get wet. Whenever I'm out traveling and filming for these episodes, I always connect to Private Internet Access to keep my data secure. With 30 million downloads and counting, Private Internet Access never records or stores user data, and their no-logs policy has been proven multiple times in court. Streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, and Disney Plus limit your library options based on your location, but with Private Internet Access, you can change your IP address to one of 91 countries and all 50 US states to overcome these restrictions. If I want to watch The Office on Netflix here in the US, I can just connect to a Canadian server and I'm good to go. It's also one of the few VPNs that support peer-to-peer file sharing. Private Internet Access is available for all platforms, your Windows or Mac OS computer, Android or iOS phone. They even support Linux. And here's the kicker: you can use one Private Internet Access subscription to protect an unlimited amount of devices at the same time. Private Internet Access is giving Weatherbox viewers 83% off their VPN service, plus 4 months free. If you want to get protected for just over $2 a month, go to piavpn.com/weatherbox or click the link in the description below. Thank you, Private Internet Access, for making this video possible. Now, interestingly enough, this was not the most significant tornado to affect Wichita Falls up to this point. 15 years earlier, on April 3, 1964, a large supercell slowly approached the town from the southwest, with multiple funnel clouds reported by the Weather Bureau. With the wall cloud clearly visible upon approach, the CBS affiliate KAUZ news crew realized they were in prime position to do something that had never been done before. They wheeled their broadcast cameras outside the studio and from the parking lot transmitted the forming tornado live on air to thousands of viewers across north-central Texas. The tornado morphed into a large cone as it cut through the north side of town, razing several blocks of the Sunset Terrace subdivision, as well as tearing down structures at Shepherd Air Force Base. The narrow damage path was given an F5 rating, but only 6 people died due to the large lead time, thanks in part to the live transmission from KAUZ. Now, coincidentally, 1964 was also a big year for severe storms research in the Central Plains. 8 years earlier, in 1956, researchers at the Cornell Aeronautical Laboratory had had assembled a 3-centimeter continuous wave Doppler radar system for the US Weather Bureau to detect the incredibly high wind speeds within tornadoes. Continuous Doppler radar does a great job at measuring the speed of a storm, comparing the reflected radio wave with the originally transmitted one, and noting the change in frequency, which corresponds to how fast the storm is moving. However, there's no good way to measure the distance between the radar station and the storm with one continuous signal. What you need is to send the radio waves out in pulses and measure the time between sending the pulse and receiving it, in addition to the strength of the received pulse signal. This time would correspond to distance and allow you to calculate the velocity of particles in the storm. In 1964, the National Severe Storms Project, formerly located in Kansas City, moved to Norman, Oklahoma, reorganizing as the National Severe Storms Laboratory, and immediately began work on modifying this continuous wave radar to transmit in pulses. And late in the year, they were successful and continued using the pulse Doppler radar in experiments through 1970. While the Weather Bureau was interested in a surveillance network of Doppler radars, 3 centimeters proved to be a wavelength that was tricky to properly attenuate. So in the late 60s, the Severe Storms Laboratory acquired a surplus FPS-18 radar from the Air Force, as well as a surplus tower from Tinker Air Force Base. By early 1969, it sat assembled at the Severe Storms Laboratory and became operational in 1971. It was one of the few 10-centimeter Doppler radars in the world at the time, but lacked a real-time display for storm velocity data. By May of 1973, meteorologists R.J. Doviak and D. Sermons devised a way to compute and display real-time Doppler velocity values as 3 shades of gray on a CRT screen. On May 24th, a violent tornado hit Union City, Oklahoma, just 30 miles west of the 10-centimeter Doppler radar at the Severe Storms Laboratory. Upon analyzing the radar data gathered, meteorologists saw a clear circulation on the velocity display. This became known as the tornado vortex signature and was concrete evidence that Doppler radar could be used to detect rotating mesocyclones within thunderstorms prior to tornado development. Unfortunately, the following year, the super outbreak of '74 would wreak havoc on the eastern US, where there were no state-of-the-art Doppler radars. By 1979, the desire for a nationwide Doppler radar network grew amongst the public, and so the Air Force Geophysical Laboratory installed a 5-centimeter Doppler radar at the National Severe Storms Laboratory to compare its performance with the 10-centimeter radar on site. Now, weather-wise, the winters of the late 70s were bitterly cold across the lower 48, and this pattern continued into January of 1979. Several cold waves knocked temperatures to as low as 16 degrees below normal across the central United States. As the snow melted into spring, the central US became active with severe weather. Tornadoes struck Oklahoma on March 18th, damaging 30 Tulsa homes. The small town of Bradyville, Iowa, was destroyed by an F4 tornado on March 29th, but thankfully no one was killed. By the second week of April, it appeared strong air masses would clash in the Central Plains for a more substantial event. A sharp trough of low pressure aloft was digging southeastward across New Mexico with a weak area of low pressure at the surface over Cheyenne. This trough would exhibit negative tilt as it pushed through Texas, focusing the area of severe weather right here, directly east of the trough axis. If enough moisture made its way into northern Texas by the afternoon, discrete supercell storms would explode and spin like a top. It was a relatively easy forecast to make given the clear synoptic setup. By dawn, dew points were in the mid-50s and fog covered much of central Texas. As the sun rose, cloud cover in west central Texas began to clear and the sunshine heated the lower atmosphere to near 70 degrees. By noon, storms fired just west of Dallas within this clouded area in central Texas, racing off to the northeast. These storms produced small hail, but clustered together and did not offer a significant tornado threat. However, to the southwest, the dry line initiated several supercells within the sunshine that exhibited explosive growth as they approached the Oklahoma border. At 1:55 p.m., the Forecast Center issued Tornado Watch number 67, encompassing north central Texas and south central Oklahoma. Because the storms on the northern edge of the dry line often initiate first, the northern supercell in this line was the first to drop a tornado. A severe thunderstorm warning was issued at 2:50 p.m. for Ford, Knox, and Will Barger counties, and at 3:05, a small tornado touched down near Ford City. Sometimes with young supercells, this first tornado is rather weak, but once the mesocyclone gets cut off from the warm inflow, dies, and a new one forms, the second tornado can be much stronger, and that's exactly what happened with this Ford County storm. The weather office in Wichita Falls received a tornado report from the Vernon PD at 3:28, and a tornado warning was issued immediately for Wilbarger County. Sirens sounded in the town of Vernon 2 minutes later, the Wilbarger County seat home to 12,000 people. The police chief and county sheriff sent patrol cars southwest of the city, giving them a clear view of the storm as it cycled, dropping a second stronger tornado. Dennis Lingnow took this photo of the tornado as it approached from the southwest. Within 10 minutes, the eastern edge of Vernon was clipped hard. The last few homes along the east-west residential streets were reduced to rubble. Many cars were still driving along US 287 when the tornado crossed the road. 7 people died in their cars as they were tossed by the tornado, an unfortunate common theme of the day. The Sands Motel was destroyed with several people inside. Word of the damage in Vernon spread pretty quickly to neighboring cities like Wichita Falls. Directly to the southeast, still in Wilbarger County, a second supercell had matured and dropped an incredibly wide but relatively weak multi-vortex tornado near the community of Harold. Drivers who had missed the passage of the Vernon tornado had a clear view to the south of this wide, rotating mass as it approached the highway. Wayne Collimore took these incredible photographs of this wide wedge from the side of Highway 287. One driver was killed from taking shelter beneath a semi as the tornado crossed the road, something that should be avoided at all costs. This tornado would track 64 miles over the next hour, but affect mainly rural farmland. As it passed to the west of Granfield, Oklahoma, a supercell that had been developing along the line to the south dropped a tornado near Seymour, Texas. Residents of the town reported large hail falling before they got a clear view of a small funnel. National Severe Storms Laboratory storm chasers were positioned along US 183 and took these fantastic photographs of the tornado as it moved parallel to the highway. Despite the destruction in Vernon, this tornado outbreak was, up to this point, that of a storm chaser's dream. Large, dark mesocyclones with picturesque tornadoes against the stark contrast of daylight behind them. The discrete storm mode allowed cells to remain undisturbed for several hours in an atmosphere prime for tornado genesis. As the twister matured into a large stovepipe, kicking up the red North Texas dust, the Vernon supercell had cycled once again and was approaching the Wichita Mountains. Now, these storms were approaching the 10-centimeter Doppler radar at the National Severe Storms Laboratory, and it was actively scanning the sky that afternoon. This scan, taken at 3:55 p.m. Central Time, shows the Vernon supercell here, the Harold Lawn Track supercell here, and the developing Seymour supercell to the south. You can also notice clear velocity couplets on the Harold and Vernon supercells, even though they were quite far away. The weird banding and data loss you see here is called range folding. You see, meteorologists can change how many pulses per second a Doppler radar emits depending on what exactly they want to observe. If too high, the radar will emit the next pulse before receiving the previous one. In this instance, meteorologists were using the 10-centimeter radar for a rain gauge experiment, so the pulses per second were higher than what would be used for tornado detection. Had they been using the correct pulse rate, we'd get some fantastic velocity signatures on these supercells. At 5 p.m., the Oklahoma City Weather Office extended the tornado warning to Comanche County, and shortly after, a tornado dropped down in the city limits of Lawton, a city of 75,000 residents south of Fort Sill. Hitting the far southern homes near the edge of the airport, it tore through 20 blocks of homes and businesses before crossing the H.E. Bailey Turnpike on the east side of town. Although considerably narrower than the Harold tornado, the EF3 rated funnel broke windows, peeled away outer walls, flattened modular homes, rolled over cars, snapped trees, and put hundreds of lives on hold as homes became unlivable. It also managed to flip a truck carrying a sizable load of hazardous chemicals a block away from the Lawton Hospital. Truly a worst-case scenario. However, none of the material spilled or caught fire. Over 400 structures were damaged and 3 people were killed. While the northern supercells began to interfere with each other, the southern cell was all alone in northern Archer County. Baseball-sized hail was falling across southern Wichita County as the storm pushed northeast. And just ahead lie Wichita Falls, a city of 95,000 people. Now, around 5:30, radar observed 2 separate mesocyclones within this storm, which is noteworthy but not uncommon. This southern mesocyclone was associated with the Seymour tornado that had lifted 10 minutes prior, but this second mesocyclone was strengthening and would soon produce a second tornado dangerously close to Wichita Falls. This is how supercells cycle and produce multiple tornadoes. While a severe thunderstorm warning was in place for Wichita County, the southwestern flank of the storm was obscured by hail, so residents didn't see the immediate danger ahead. But Wolfgang Lang was looking out the window of his apartment right here on Barrett Road as the rain subsided, camera in hand, photographing the massive wall cloud. And then the tornado reached down to earth. The wedge widened as multiple vortices danced around the center. Still a few miles away, but heading for his home, Wolfgang moved outside to the parking lot, ready to take shelter in the laundry room. He continued photographing the tornado as it approached Memorial Stadium and McNeil Junior High School. With the tornado less than a mile away, Wolfgang finally took shelter amongst the washers and dryers and escaped with just minor injuries. The junior high school was gone. Roof deleted, twisted steel beams, outer walls reduced to rubble. Directly to the east, Robert Millett was standing in his driveway to the rear of his home off of Kingston Drive, watching the tornado approach. At the same time Wolfgang was seeking shelter, Robert was beginning to take photos. Unfortunately for him, Wolfgang's apartment complex was partially obscuring the tornado from his view, and he likely never realized how close it was until he saw the apartments fly into the air in front of him. If you're wondering how on earth Robert made it out alive, his pickup truck was blown on top of him in his garage, which ironically sheltered him from debris. If he instead had a Super 8 camera, we'd be left with some of the most dramatic tornado footage ever recorded. At this point, people not directly in the path of the tornado began hopping in their cars and attempting to leave town. This created a dangerous situation, as these people were now putting themselves at risk of death from this massive twister. It pulverized home after home, crossing Southwest Parkway, where it bulldozed the Southwest National Bank. Only the vault was left standing after the tornado passed. During this time, Pat Blacklock was standing outside his home on the south shore of Lake Wichita, with a rain-free view to the north. He photographed the tornado as it grew in size and strength. The winds from the rear flank downdraft raced across Lake Wichita, producing small choppy waves. At the same time, Joe Henderson was standing outside the D.L. Ligon Coliseum at Midwestern State University, right about here. He took photographs of the tornado as it advanced, but wisely sought shelter as it crossed Kiwanis Park. This is where the tornado reached maximum intensity, atop the Western Hills and Faith Village neighborhood. Within this mile-long stretch, homes were chewed to a pulp. While most violent tornadoes have their worst damage confined to a very narrow path, the F4 damage that occurred here was over half a mile wide. Hundreds of ranch-style homes were flattened. The Ben Milan Elementary School was clipped by the twister, but thankfully it was spring vacation at the time. Leon Hooten, veteran reporter for the Times Record News, was in his home on Edgecliff Drive as the tornado approached. He had his camera in hand, equipped with an 85mm lens, and captured the tornado at its maximum intensity over Faith Village. Pieces of homes and treetops are visible circling the funnel several hundred feet in the air. Leon, his daughter, and several neighbors took shelter in their bathroom and survived. With such a clear view of the tornado, many residents on the east side of town were in a full-on panic, trying to flee from the storm in their cars. Traffic began to slow on east-west parkways through town. The twister clipped the J.C. Penney's at Psych Center Mall, tossing cars from the parking lot. While it missed Joe Henderson and Midwestern State University, it instead destroyed the Colonial Park neighborhood along Holiday Creek. At this exact time, Russell Jennings was positioned at what might be the best vantage point of any violent tornado ever, the Vantage Point condominiums. Situated on a high floor in the southwest corner of the building, he took this startling picture of the black funnel against the blue sky, likely at the same time as it destroyed the Pizza Hut and Long John Silver's on Jacksboro Highway. Simultaneously, James Montgomery was attempting to outrun the tornado in his station wagon, but like many other residents, found himself unable to gain any ground on the black funnel. As a last-ditch effort to take shelter, he parked his car under this Highway 281 overpass and ran up underneath it, spread eagle, and braced himself as the tornado passed a few hundred feet to the north. While this is never recommended for a myriad of reasons, he did survive, and others who stayed in their vehicles did not. The tornado crossed US 281, slamming the Sun Valley apartments and adjacent homes, and then crossed US 287, barreling through the Candlewood Trailer Park. Over 18,000 people had lived in the homes and trailers decimated by this twister. As it exited the town, the lack of structures ahead meant less debris to fill the condensation funnel, and now the distinct multi-vortex shape became very apparent. This tornado was far from over. The supercell remained in a favorable environment for several more hours, and the twister made it all the way to Eureka, Oklahoma before the inflow became occluded and the funnel lifted. This particular tornado is remarkable for several reasons, the main one being that despite the 18,000 residents directly in the path of the funnel, only 45 of them lost their lives. If you narrow that down even further, 20 residents who were outrunning the tornado in their cars were seriously injured. However, their homes ended up sustaining light to no damage. If they would have just stayed at home, the death toll would be closer to 30. You had a large lead time with loud sirens blaring across town, a very visible funnel, and heightened awareness due to what happened earlier that day in Vernon. And today, Wichita Falls has physically recovered quite well. It was my first time in Texas, and I was eager to get away from Dallas and see what a smaller city was like. It's located right at that transitional point where the deciduous trees and shrubs become few and far between. And I had a great time there. I even picked up this fantastic VCR that I had to ship back to Ohio because it was so large. I hope you guys enjoyed learning about this violent tornado during a pivotal time for Doppler radar technology. If you want to send me weather-related stuff, my mailing address is up here. You can also send me an email beforehand just to give me a heads up. Leave your personal stories and video suggestions in the comments below, and I'll see you guys soon.